as of now. President Trump is going to land at 10:10 a.m. here in Anchorage at the joint military base where I'm standing at the moment. This is one of the most secure areas in which two top leaders could have engaged, given the short notice that Alaska was announced as the venue for this meeting. Aditi.
Absolutely. And when we are talking about, the venue, also take our viewers through the significance of this meeting, the timing, what's crucial if this meeting is successful and if it's not.
Well, there has been discussion about having a peace deal for some time now. And remember, in June, Russia had come out with a memorandum of demands if a peace deal had to go through. And those demands were that Ukraine reduce the size of its army, Ukraine not join the NATO, as well as the territory that Russia has been able to gain in Ukraine over the last 3.5 years, and previously the annexation of Crimea. That territory remains with Russia. Under that context, in fact, there are questions being raised about the word territorial swap itself. Swap, as the word itself is defined, is a give and take. However, what Russia has indicated that is only going to take the territory from Ukraine that it has gained over the last 3.5 years, and of course, Crimea. The territory that Russia has gained is on its western border with the Ukraine. So it's Ukraine's eastern border, at least 4 oblasts where Russia has made gains, and they want to keep that territory, which is totally unacceptable to Ukraine. Ukraine has completely put its foot down as far as this demand of Russia is concerned. They are also concerned about the other demands, that of Ukraine not joining the NATO or reducing the size of its army. After all, the decision whether or not to join a security alliance, that is NATO, is a sovereign decision of a nation. And therefore, they do not want to be blackmailed through a peace deal into letting go of that, even though, let me point out that this entire war that started 3.5 years ago, and Russia have said that they do not want Ukraine to join NATO. And that was one of the reasons that they are waging this war, because Ukraine was showing interest in joining the NATO. At that time, it would have been extremely difficult, as it is for Ukraine, to join the NATO, because one of NATO's important charters points for membership is that there should be no territorial dispute of the territory of the nation that wants to be part of NATO. And at that time, Crimea was under annexation of Russia, and that was disputed. So it would have really been a long haul for Ukraine to finally become a member of the NATO. And therefore, many had, in fact, raised skepticism over the real reason for Russia waging a war against Ukraine. Aditi, I also want to take you through some of the pictures here. You've seen kind of interest, and naturally so, of the global media all across here. You can see media outlets who have traveled from various parts of the world, specifically a lot of media from the European countries as well. It's not just here, across the street as well. You'll see a whole line there of cars that are stacked with their OB vans, all reporting from here, hoping that some sort of a peace deal can be struck. At least the first step towards that can be taken at the joint military base here in Anchorage. Of course, Donald Trump has already pointed out that this may perhaps be the first meeting. If things go as planned, then there could be subsequent meetings between Russia, Ukraine, European partners, and America. And the final decision will be taken regarding Ukraine's future fate, the territorial swap, whatever it is, with Ukraine being party to those decisions, because Ukraine has made it clear that no decision can be taken without its consent and assent or its participation. After all, at the end of the day, they were the ones against whom the war was waged.
Absolutely, Maha. All eyes are on this meeting. The world is watching with bated breath what will happen inside those closed doors. Will there be a peace deal? Will world witness a pact between Trump and Putin? But what exactly is the meeting all about? How Donald Trump is playing his cards before this meeting, while my colleague Maha Siddiqui continues to stay with me. Let's also listen in to the reactions that are coming in. This is Donald Trump just before he boarded this flight to Alaska. What he said exactly about Putin facing consequences, also if he's there for Ukraine and negotiations.
We have a meeting with President Putin. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelensky will make peace. We'll see if they can get along.
You had said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe.
Are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
Yeah, they'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Are the territorial swaps?
What about the possibility of the United States providing security guarantees to Ukraine?
Maybe. Along with Europe and other countries. Not in the form of NATO, because that's not going to, there are certain things that aren't going to happen. But along with Europe, there's a possibility of that.
You heard what Donald Trump has to say. Let's also deep dive into what this meeting is all about and how the world should see it. Just shortly, in any moment now, we'll see Donald Trump landing in Alaska and heading towards this key meeting. But before that, let's also take a look at the perspective through which we should see these meetings that are coming up. Will it actually evolve in some situation or solution? Let's also open up this with my guests joining me, Matt Link, a Republican strategist, award-winning strategic commentator and political consultant, who's joining me from US. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining me. We also have Dmitry Babich, who is the deputy foreign editor and the most popular site on Russian internet. He's also joining me from Russia. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. Before coming to you, Dmitry, I'd like to open up with Matt. Mr. Matt, how do you see US will be a peacemaker as Donald Trump wanted to? Do you think so?
I think that's certainly he aspires to make that the case. And look, I think that what we've heard over the past 3 or 4 days is everything from Donald Trump is going to cater to Vladimir Putin, and that Putin is an evil genius who's going to manipulate Donald Trump, all the way through to, it's going to end up working well and everybody is going to come out of this and hug and join locked in arms and make everlasting world peace. I think that the reality is somewhere in between. I think if the meeting goes well, what you will see is that there will be an agreement to have another meeting, at which point Ukraine will sit at the table with Russia and with Donald Trump, and they'll figure out a solution to this problem. I do find it interesting, though, is that it's important to remember that Russia has held the Crimea since 2014. That's never going back to the Ukraine under any circumstances. So I think that what is open for discussion is the land in eastern Ukraine, and whether, and how much of that Ukraine wants to keep and how much Russia demands that they want. And I think that this is a case of, having troops on the ground is an indicator that Russia is probably going to keep it. So what Trump wants to do is to end the bloodshed. He wants to stop the spigot of American tax dollars going to Ukraine. And I can tell you that while Ukraine may want to be in NATO, it is not sure that NATO wants Ukraine to be a member. So again, there's lots of open conversation here. I think what's key is that the leaders of two of the world's superpowers are sitting across from a table with each other, which they should be doing. Peace is not made by throwing verbal hand grenades on social media. Peace is made when leaders sit across the table and look each other in the eye and take the measure of each other and come up with solutions.
Absolutely. Dmitry, I'm really sorry. Before coming to you, we have some breaking news coming in, and this is coming from the Russian side. The Russian president's spokesperson has spoken to media, and he has said that we'll discuss all disagreements. This is coming in the view of the Trump-Putin meeting, and this is the reaction from Russian President's spokesperson, who is saying that bilateral relations are at forefront during this meeting that will take place between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. If we have the reaction, we can also listen in. Yes, please.
В настоящий момент президент проводит совещание по вопросам развития Магаданской области. Он посетил промышленные мероприятия. Совещание содержательное, много вопросов. Это конкретные проекты, которые реализуются в области, и которые делают жизнь граждан ощущаемо лучше каждый день. Потом будет отдельная встреча с губернатором, и потом будет пунктуальный отлет из Магадана в Анкоридж в связи с тем, что ровно в 11 часов по тамошнему времени президент должен приземлиться, его будет встречать у самолета президент Трамп. И хотя, конечно, во главе угла будет стоять вопрос украинского регулирования, но это и перечень раздражителей наших двусторонних отношений. И это и возможные проекты экономического сотрудничества. Это и все аспекты украинского регулирования. Это и тезисы по региональной и международной проблематике. Это огромное количество материалов, которые, конечно, президент всегда очень внимательно читает и изучает.
В полете он, судя по будет работать с документами.
Конечно, да. В настоящий момент президент проводит совещание по вопросам развития Магаданской области. Он посетил промышленные мероприятия. Совещание.
That was the reaction coming in from Dmitry Peskov. He said that all relationship will be at forefront. The bilateral relations will be discussed with open arms between US and Russia. Let's also take a look at how the analysts see this. Dmitry Babich, deputy foreign editor and the most popular site on Russian internet, is also with me. We also have Olena Trigab, former director, Ministry of Economic and Development and Trade of Ukraine, joining me from Ukraine. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us at this hour. Dmitry, as I would like to have your reaction first. Russia is hinting that it will be a bilateral talk that will have no holds barred. There will be everything on the forefront. They will discuss it. How do you see Trump and Putin meeting?
Well, I agree with what Matt said, with just about everything that Matt said. I think that there are two mistakes that can be done. The first is to demonize Putin. You know, we already see American television repeating all the time the pictures of Trump-Putin meeting in 2018 and saying that Trump trusted Putin more than his own intelligence. Let me remind you that it was all part of a Russiagate scandal, which turned out to be just a big fake. You know, there is a big investigation in the United States about this fake. And it's a shame that American and in general Western television keeps repeating that. I hope that this will not be a repeat of the Helsinki summit, which was a failure mostly due to the pressure from the Democratic Party of the United States and from the American liberal media. I want this war to end. In that sense, I am absolutely in line with what Matt said. The question is, how can this be achieved? For Trump, this looks like a business deal, you know. He called these two regions which border the Azov Sea and the Black Sea, Kherson region and Zaporizhzhia, he called them oceanfront property. So in the language of business people, this is the most valuable property. But we are talking here not about territories mostly, but about human lives. You know, it's a huge tragedy, this war, for both Ukraine and Russia. And let me be clear about this. I think if Putin knew what a terrible war it would be in 2022, he would not aggravate it. But the war actually started early. It started in 2013 when the so-called peaceful protests were made in Kiev. organized and helped by the European Union and the United States. 38 policemen were killed. The president had to flee the country, saving his life. So the war started then, and 15,000 people were killed before this unfortunate aggravation which the Russian side took in February 2022. But now I think it's clear that some kind of a compromise needs to be reached. Okay. We cannot return to the 1991 borders. That is wishful thinking on the part of Western powers and the West in general. And Crimea, of course, will not be Ukrainian. Even the Russian emperor's family, living abroad, and basically Western-oriented people, even they remember that Crimea was Russian since the 18th century. It was conquered by the Russian Empress Catherine the Great from the Turks. And of course, Russia is not going to cede that. So what we need is a compromise. And I hope that compromise can be reached, not in Alaska. It will be just the beginning of the road. I agree with President Trump that the main summit will be the next one, in which I hope President Zelensky will take part. Because
on that note, I would also
this conflict.
Sir, please hold your thought. We also have Olena Trigger joining me from Ukraine. Ma'am, how do you see this meeting taking place in Alaska without Zelensky? Should Ukraine be on the table while these talks are going on?
Well, of course, whatever Trump and Putin agree on, without presence of other very important parties of this war, first of all, Ukraine as the victim of Russian aggression, and second of all, European Union, who are Ukrainian strategic partners helping Ukraine to defend itself. Without those actors, also China is an important actor who enables Russian war against Ukraine. Of course, no peace can be brokered. But first and foremost, Ukrainian people, they decide that they want to defend the country from Russia, and they decide whether they are ready to give up 1/5 of Ukrainian territory to Russia or not ready. And this is in Ukrainian constitution that actually it's impossible to give part of the country to another country. So expectations are very low. I don't think anything productive will come out of this meeting. And I think that the main reason for Putin wanting to have this meeting is postponing and lifting some sanctions against Russia.
Okay. While we continue to dwell on this fact that is it a win-win situation or not, Matt, you heard the perspective. Why is the US going forward in talks with the other side while not having all fair sides on the table? US President Donald Trump says that he's not there to negotiate for Ukraine, but he's just there so that everybody can come on the same table. But do you think that Donald Trump, before going to the meeting, should have spoken and convinced Zelensky also to be part of this meeting?
No, I mean, look, the reality is that America and Russia have a much bigger and deeper relationship than just the war in Ukraine right now. There will be other things discussed. This is just what the news media is focusing on. So Donald Trump does seek to bring President Putin and President Zelensky to the same table to negotiate out a solution. However, the American relationship with Russia is a lot more complicated than just the war in Ukraine. And look, an American president has not sat down with a Russian leader since 2021. That's a really long time. So it's, again, this is the bilateral meeting between two of the world's great superpowers. The stakes are bigger than just Ukraine, which is a topic of discussion, but not the topic of discussion.
But Matt, we saw the meeting before as well, as Dmitry was mentioning, the 2018 Helsinki meeting between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Do you think this time we will see a different scenario playing out?
Well, I think you'll see a radically different scenario. Mr. Trump is much more secure in his position as the leader of the free world. I think that, as Dmitry mentioned, there was the overhang of the fake Russia collusion story that has now been exposed as a Democratic plot to weaken the presidency of Donald Trump in his first term. And look, Donald Trump is as strong as he has ever been in power, and I think that he is a much greater force for peace on the world stage. And I think that the meeting today with Vladimir Putin, I think it's an important meeting not only for Ukraine but also for U.S.-Russia relations on a going forward basis. Again, two of the world's great superpowers. It is myopic to not have at least a relationship where conversations are occurring at the highest level. And that didn't happen under President Biden.
Okay, gentlemen, as we are speaking, we are also getting some breaking news that is coming in. And as we are holding this countdown to the Trump-Putin meeting, we also have information coming in that Russian President Vladimir Putin's plane is now over Anchorage, and anytime now we'll see Russian President Vladimir Putin landing in Alaska, after which the duo with Donald Trump, he will go and hold this meeting where everything will be playing out in front of us, whether there will be a peace deal or not, what will happen. Currently, we know that Russian President Vladimir Putin's plane is flying over Anchorage. This is the venue where the talks will take place, and the visuals on your screens are coming live from Alaska, where the planes are expected to land anytime now. We'll see Russian President landing there. We'll see US President Donald Trump landing there, and then the duo will go on to engage in this high-stakes summit in Alaska, where all eyes are on what will be coming out of this meeting. And my guests continue to stay with me. We also have all other reactions coming in as we continue to build up to this high-stakes meeting in Alaska. You can see that we are continuing our coverage. We have live visuals coming in. We also have our reporters joining live from the ground. And while we delve more into it, we also have Olena, as we continue to talk about, what's expected out of the meeting, do you think that Trump and Putin will, have some kind of an arrangement? Or what are the options for Ukraine, given that Zelensky is planning to meet Macron and other European allies as well?
Well, the maximum the maximum that can happen, I think, something which I consider productive, which I give maybe 10% chance, is that there will be a ceasefire achieved, a temporary ceasefire, potentially only ceasefire against the civilian infrastructure, not launching drones, missiles on Ukraine. This can happen, but in a nutshell, it's important to understand that Putin doesn't want Ukrainian territory. Putin doesn't want to stop the war. Putin wants to destroy Ukraine, and Putin cannot even stop this horrible war that he started himself, because he created the whole war machine inside Russia, and his whole regime is now war-oriented. So this is why the maximum that we can expect is some temporary solution, but absolutely nobody expects any peace from Putin.
Okay, Dmitry Babich, how would you see it? Ukrainian side has to say that Russian president is not in the mood to go for an end to this war. How do you see what will US present on the table that will convince Russian President Vladimir Putin that a temporary truce should be achieved now?
Even from our conversation, you see how difficult it would be to hold any talks if Mr. Zelensky was invited there, because Zelensky said all kinds of terrible things about Putin that we have just heard. Putin said all kinds of terrible things about Zelensky. So that's why this meeting between the Russian and the American presidents is needed now. I think in this I partially agree with Olena that there can be achieved some kind of an agreement on not striking what we call an air truce, a truce in the air. Both sides would agree not to hit each other's cities and military objects deep inside each other's territory. The problem is that it's not only Russia hitting the Ukrainian territory, Ukraine also hits Russian cities, life in the Russian regions bordering Ukraine has become pretty dangerous. Just today, there was an air attack against Belgorod, the city administration there. This is not reported in the Western press, but believe me, that's happening, and that's a cause for concern in Russia. So I think that they will start moving towards some kind of a compromise. A compromise is badly needed because this war is a danger for Europe. It's a danger for the world. Russia wants to end it. Ukraine wants to end it. Europe doesn't want to end it because the European politicians, the globalists, and part of the Democratic Party in the United States, they view this war as an opportunity to weaken Russia and to change the regime in Russia. Actually, if you see at the initial steps of the American and European administration after the beginning of the very severe phase of the war in 2022, they thought that they would destroy Russia by sanctions. We see the continuation of this policy now when Mr. Trump is trying to force India to stop buying Russian oil, threatening, the tariffs.
Right.
This is, of course, illegal because all these so-called secondary sanctions are illegal. You can sanction Russia, but you cannot sanction countries trading with Russia. It's India's right to trade with Russia if it wants
Dimitri,
to.
Dimitri, as we speak, as per Russian government, Vladimir Putin's plane has landed in Alaska. That is the breaking news that we are getting in now. Anytime now, we'll have those visuals coming in of Russian President Vladimir Putin walking out of the plane and heading towards the venue where the talks will take place. This is the reaction, that is the breaking input that we are getting you. As per Russian government, Vladimir Putin's plane has landed in Alaska. This is the venue where the talks will take place. The Trump-Putin summit, the high-stakes summit will take place. Putin's plane has landed in Anchorage. And we also have Maha Siddiqui joining me as per the information. Maha, can you give us any live update around what time exactly will the talks begin as the plane has landed now?
Well, the talks are supposed to start at 11:30 a.m. local time. So there is still some time before the talks are going to start. Before that, of course, Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump will both land there on those pictures that you can see at the moment, Aditi, on our television screens. The stage is all set with a red carpet to welcome both the leaders. And it is still unclear whether there will be any sort of greeting that the two leaders will engage in on the tarmac itself. Now, if that happens, that will again give us an indication that at least the meeting is starting off on a note where the two leaders are trying to understand each other before getting into the meeting and discussing hardcore issues of a peace deal. Now, the peace deal cannot be struck technically in this meeting because the party that against whom the war has been waged, that is Ukraine, is not part of the meeting today. And Ukraine has ensured with its European allies that that message is put across to America, that it cannot decide on its behalf, especially with regards to the issue of territorial swaps. US President Donald Trump, in that flight to Alaska, has told reporters that the issue of territorial swaps will be discussed. But at the end of the day, Ukraine will have to assent to it, will have to take the final call. Why the word territorial swap is worrying Ukraine is because even though they are using the term swap for this deal, the fact of the matter is that Russia, in a memorandum that they had put out in June, had clearly said they are looking at keeping control of the territories that are under its control after the 3.5 years of war and after their annexation of Crimea, which includes approximately a whole lot of area in 4 oblasts in Ukraine, which are bordering Russia, which includes the Donbass region that has been at the center of this entire war since the beginning, as well as the entire Crimea. And that is totally unacceptable to Ukraine. A swap would technically mean there's give and take of land, but in this case, it appears that Russia only wants to keep the land that it has wrested control of from Ukraine. So the meeting is going to start on a very critical note of US President Donald Trump judging, as he says, whether or not Russian President Vladimir Putin is even interested in a peace deal. And he's also made a big statement just a short while back where he has said that he will walk out of the meeting if he feels that it's not going the way that he anticipates it, which is that he wants a ceasefire, that he wants the war in Ukraine to end. And if he feels that the Russian president is not serious about that, he may even walk out of the meeting. So these are critical factors to remember as we go ahead into that meeting in some time from now.
Absolutely. And Maha, as we speak, we have the visuals of that plane in which it is reported that the Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Alaska. These are the visuals that we are getting you. And anytime now, we will see those first visuals of President Putin coming out of that plane and then heading towards the venue where the high-stakes summit is to take place between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President Donald Trump. We'll also have more detailed analysis. We also have our guests, Matt Link, Republican strategist, award-winning strategic column and political consultant. We have Dmitry Babich, deputy foreign editor of the most popular site on Russian internet. And we also have Olena Trigub. We currently have Dmitry Babich and Olena Trigub on our broadcast. Olena, as we are seeing that, Russian president has arrived, do you think this outcome of this summit will in any way be crucial or will make headway in the Ukrainian war?
Like I said, I don't believe in any good outcome because we in Ukraine, we have analyzed Vladimir Putin and Russian regime for many years now. And we understand that he attacked Ukraine not because he wants to take away our territory. He just wants to destroy Ukraine as a country because he doesn't like that Ukraine is a democratic European nation. And he has not achieved this goal. He hasn't destroyed Ukraine yet. So why would he stop the war now? He once destroyed the statehood of Ukraine. And this compromise, which is being discussed, that Ukraine will be able to have its own army, to have its own democratically elected president, Vladimir Putin doesn't want that. And this is why I don't think that he will, agree miraculously on something just because he met Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I'm not sure what leverage he has to make Putin stop the war. But I hope that at least there will be some little progress made. But expectations, like I say, repeat, very low.
Okay, so expectations are very low. Dmitry, how do you see when Russia says that they are heading there and the bilateral relationship is what is in the focus, but US president said that if the talks don't go his way, he'll walk out, there will be sanctions, there will be severe economic consequences on Russia if the outcome of this meeting is not according to what Donald Trump says. Do you think this is a level playing field between Russia and US as Trump and Putin hold talks?
I hope Trump will not walk out of the meeting because if there is a chance to make the situation better, to end the tragedy, and the war is a tragedy, every chance should be used. I would like to point your attention to the fact that Dmitry Muratov, the famous Russian journalist who opposed this war and who is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, he called on Mr. Trump to call on both Putin and Zelensky to release the political prisoners in both Russia and Ukraine. Because there are political prisoners in both of these countries. The Ukrainian government is not democratic. I can criticize a lot my own Russian government, but actually what happened in the last 10 years was a tragedy for both countries. And the whole war started not in 2022, as I told you, it started in 2013, 2014, with the so-called revolution, or rather a coup in Ukraine. This tragedy should end, and it cannot end only on the terms of Mr. Zelensky and his European allies. That's not going to happen. So I hope that Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin will agree on some kind of a compromise. And then there will be another meeting with the participation of Zelensky and probably of European leaders, where Trump and Putin will try to explain to them that it's in their interest to end the war with some kind of a middle ground solution. That would be the best outcome. Now, unfortunately, I have to leave this meeting because I told your team that I cannot stay longer, but they don't answer. So I'm leaving this meeting. Thank you
so
bye-bye.
much, sir, for extending your live. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us all those details. Olena, I'll just come back to you, but we have to quickly take a break and we will continue our live coverage. Moments from now on, we will see those visuals of Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump holding this high-stakes summit amid Ukraine war. For now, we're slipping into a very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week strategic ESG certification program for business sustainability and growth for CXO and business leaders by NDTV, Terry, and Zenora. Master global ESG frameworks, gain real-world tools, and lead with impact. Starts August the 23rd. Enroll now and power your business with sustainability.
यहाँ पे आप खड़े रहेंगे।
मैं यहाँ पे। एक्शन। तेरी सांसों को मेरे दिल में पनाह मिल जाए। मैं पढ़ के बोलूं? आपने कहा था। मुझे याद नहीं। चलो सुनने तक के। अरे भैया आप मेरे आगे मत रहो। हमारी एक्टिविटीज जो आगे और शाम के फंक्शन तक आप ठीक रहेंगे ना? बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। हम चाय लेंगे? हाँ। थोड़ा राइट में लीजिए।
प्रवीण जी, we are ready when you are ready. आप ही लोगों का कार्यक्रम है, जोरदार तालियों से जरा जय जवान का और अपना स्वागत हम यहीं पे कर लेते हैं। थैंक यू सो मच। एक बार जोरदार तालियां सभी के लिए।
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Do I buy Ola?
Should I hold CDSL for the long term?
Buy, sell or hold.
The answers you need, straight from the experts.
Callers from India and across the world. Connect live, ask, decide and invest wisely.
Your portfolio, your future. Ask Profit.
And you know, that's why it's being said that after Kahuna Pyare, this is the film that has got two superstar debutants who are becoming superstars. But what was this faith that you had on these two that you know that shows on screen?
You know, you don't plan to make a blockbuster. You plan to make a good film. And that's what I think they never let me, you know, they didn't put that pressure on me to live up to. They never gave me a number that we have to hit or a so-called figure that I have to open to. There was all these trappings were just not there, which normally producers do end up putting that pressure. You know, then you make wrong things. Then you add a song for a shadi song, add a Punjabi song. All these trappings were not there in this film. They were like, just go there and make your film. Do this script. We love this.
Hello, Moto.
Moto G96 5G. All eyes on you.
Now let's also take a look at what is expected and what are the possible outcomes of this high-stakes meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. let's take a look at what my colleague Maha Siddiqui, who is reporting live from Alaska, has to say. Take a look.
So what are the expectations of the two leaders who are meeting in Anchorage? What is it that they expect out of this meeting? Well, Moscow has already said that the memorandum that they put out in June with regard to a peace deal with Ukraine stands, which means that they want the Ukrainian army size to be reduced. They do not want Ukraine to join the NATO and the territory that Russia has been able to wrest control of in Ukraine. Over the 3.5 years of the war and previously the annexation of Crimea, this region remains with Russia. All these demands are unacceptable to Ukraine, and anticipating the worst, that is a land swap possibly, Ukraine has already said that it will be unacceptable to it, especially considering the fact that they have been sidelined and are not party to this discussion. And that's the reason we have seen the toning down by US President Donald Trump of the expectation from this meeting, and also saying that it is possible that the meeting in Anchorage on Friday is followed by a meeting with the Ukrainian side as well as the European partners. President Putin will also hope that he steps out of the meeting with reduced sanctions on Moscow, the sanctions that were imposed by US after the war in Ukraine. For the American president, the expectations could be personal in nature. He perhaps believes that if he's instrumental in being able to facilitate peace in Ukraine and an end to the war, then his position for a Nobel Prize will be strengthened. Now, his administration has been open about this desire of the president, and we've also seen lately how President Trump has been talking and boasting about the number of ceasefires that he has been able to facilitate. There's also speculation about the possibility of an economic deal involving the critical mineral sector in Alaska between Russia and the US. However, some of the senior leaders are calling this highly speculative.
Continue to track the Trump-Putin meet. These are the visuals coming in of the final stage of preparations for the most awaited press conference. So remember, this is the press conference that will detail what exactly happened in that closed-door meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. US President Donald Trump is meeting face-to-face with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska for a high-stakes summit that could determine not only the trajectory of the war in Ukraine, but also the fate of European security. This sit-down offers Trump a chance to prove to the world that he is both a master deal-maker and a global peacemaker. And for Putin, a summit with Trump offers a long-sought opportunity to try to negotiate a deal that would cement Russia's gains, block Kyiv's bid to join the NATO military alliance, and eventually pull Ukraine back into Moscow's orbit. Trump, however, has said that if he did not like the meeting as per his willing, he'll walk out of this meeting. However, the Russian side has highlighted, the Russian president's spokesperson, in fact, has said that this meeting can last for up to 7 hours. But the press conference, as per the schedule, is slated at 5 a.m. this morning. Don't go anywhere as NDTV continues its rolling coverage on what exactly will happen between this meeting, what it means for the world. And the US president said he's unsure whether an immediate ceasefire can be achieved, but expressed interest in brokering a peace agreement. Remember, Mr. Trump has also said that Ukraine, he's not there to negotiate for Ukraine, but to bring Ukraine also on the table. And a possible three-way meet post-Alaska summit is also on the cards. But what exactly do we expect from this meeting? My colleague Gauri Dwivedi, executive editor of the NDTV World team, joins me with the possible outcomes that we can see of this meeting that is going to take place any time now.
Let's cover the whole gamut from absolutely nothing to maybe a big breakthrough. So first scenario that could actually come out of it is that they agree to a phased truce and some sort of a land swap that could take place in Ukraine. And this could be monitored, international buffer zones that could be created. Who will create them? Who will monitor them? Will they actually be followed? Is is a separate question altogether, but this is a potential scenario where Zelensky resists any of these terms, conceding land to Russia. They've said that again. Zelensky is backed by the whole of EU and the whole of NATO, saying that there will not be any land concessions, because that's what Ukraine has been fighting for and has been holding ground for the last 3.5 years. So this is the first scenario that could possibly come in. Let's tell you the second one, which is a temporary freeze in war as deal is negotiated. Essentially a cessation of hostilities. There could be some prisoner swaps that could take place. And but the challenge that could really be here in terms of seen as rewarding aggression, or you could say actually favoring Russia, because Russia is also happy if it's a cessation of hostilities rather than conceding any potential concession to Ukraine. Third possible outcome or scenario could be that Trump offers sanctions relief for de-escalation. Now, again, something that has very little effect, simply because US and Russia do not have that level of great economic exchange that this could actually have an impact. And also, the Russian war machine has said in the last 3.5 years that it's been able to function no matter how many secondary and third sanctions that they keep imposing. The last scenario that I want to put out is, viewers, which is that talks fail as Trump and Putin refuse to make any concessions. As I said, we covered the entire gamut, with scenario 1 being the West, scenario 4 saying that they exit and the war continues. Which way it will be remains to be seen.
Now, as both sides come on the table, we will be seeing how the optics play out, as the Russian foreign minister is also one of the 5 Russian officials attending the summit. He turned up wearing a USSR shirt and says that Russian delegation has clear, understandable position. Amid all this optics, what exactly will happen? Anytime from now on, the meeting will take place, but don't go anywhere. We will be slipping into a very short break.
Pulling us into this country.
They argue, I conclude. They deflect, I drill down. Rather than this isn't a free-for-all. It's a reckoning. No filler, no fog. Only the facts and where they lead. Every night at 9, the case closes because the buck stops here.
Rajasthan is history, culture, and much more. And I have been reporting on all things royal for more than 25 years.
The colors, the culture, and the complexities of the Northeast is different from the rest of the country. I have been bringing the Northeast closer to the capital for over 15 years. Madhya Pradesh is the heart of India, and I have been capturing its every beat for over 10 years, covering the corridors of power, what is said, what is left unsaid, and what it actually means for you and me. I have it all covered.
Kashmir is often called paradise on earth, a region that has been in a state of flux from conflict to India's crowning glory. I have been reporting and decoding Jammu and Kashmir for last 3 decades.
Mohit, you are known for your music. All your films, musics stay with us till today. I'm a millennial and those music are kind of music. So whenever we say Mohit Suri film aa raha hai, we know the music will be good, right? It's a given. So you really work hard. But is this always like how you create your music? You need everything in place, the mood, the lighting, even when the person is in the studio and just singing. And also, how did you select your musicians that this person's voice is perfect for this song?
That's what I think, the amount you give to a song, that's how long it will last, I think. Everyone does the programming, everyone writes the words, everyone makes the thing. But the thing is how much you give, how much of heart you give to the lyrics or to the music or to the melody or to the singing. That's how long the song will last, is what I genuinely feel. If you don't give that love, you're not going to get it back. It's just a simple debit and credit procedure, I think, with the audience. I genuinely feel I don't have any special skill. I don't know any scale or anything else. It's just that I enjoy that process a lot. Give me an evening to just go for a film party or something, I'll skip it. But you give me like a struggling musician to go who has a great tune, some new guys, chill all night with them, I can do that. I can just sit there, make music and stuff like that. We just did that recently. Fahim came down. He just surprised us, and we met in my Bandra office, and Han was there, Aneet was there, and he made me hear his other songs and stuff like that. But it was it's so much fun, because I just think making music, I mean, film, you still get to see something. I think music is so amazing. I mean, you just
don't need to see anything.
It's in the air, and suddenly it just comes together, and it's just, you can just feel it. And something you hear makes you feel something. It's just magical.
NDTV.
As we continue to wait for that key meeting that will take place, we have the live visuals coming in now of the venue where the plane of US President Donald Trump will land anytime now, and in a few moments from now we are getting this information that Donald Trump's plane is landing in Alaska. It is in the air now, and anytime now we'll see those visuals coming in of Donald Trump stepping out of the plane, as well as going towards that key summit that will take place in Alaska. All eyes are on this key meeting between Trump and Putin, while Ukraine is also emphasizing that negotiations now depend on what US will say to Putin to convince him. These are the visuals now. The plane has landed. You can see that Air Force One plane is there on the site, and on the runway you can see Donald Trump has landed. We saw earlier how US President Donald Trump's plane has landed. Now we have also the information that Ukrainian president is also keen on putting his trust on US President Donald Trump, that after this meeting there will be some solution to the Russia-Ukraine war that is everlasting, and destruction is, you can't measure the destruction that has taken place during this time of war between Russia and Ukraine. Now Donald Trump's plane has landed in Alaska. We also have Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has arrived in Alaska, and now the duo will head towards the summit and will hold those key talks, in which will we see a peace deal coming out or not remains to be seen. But before that, we are slipping into a very short break. Don't go anywhere.
If it matters to you, if it matters to you, if it matters to you, it matters to India, it matters to India, and it matters to me, and it matters to me.
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
Vanakkam Tamil Nadu.
Well, the battle for Tamil Nadu 2026 is open now.
After Chief Minister Stalin rolls up his sleeves and Vijay steps in as a star challenger.
This is a mass gathering, not for cash.
Meanwhile, a former Chief Minister, Edapadi Palanisamy, begins his fight back.
The big comeback campaign by EPS has well and truly begun.
These are all the ultimate players, and this is going to be the ultimate test.
हेलो बोलिए मैडम, डब्बा ट्रेडिंग कब से चल रहा है पता है मैडम आपको? हम और आप तो जन्म भी नहीं हुआ था हमारा.
We investigated a shady advisory firm that has spent big bucks on advertising on the front pages of national dailies.
ये आपको बिल्कुल उसका ऐसे हल्का सा भी खौफ नहीं है.
मैडम एक बात, खौफ किस लिए रखना चाहिए तो बताओ, कौन सा गलत काम कर रहा हूँ मैं?
After our report, we also saw NSE came out with a cautionary circular to the investors. Market Regulator Securities and Exchange Board of India has also come out with a release talking about the actions that it has taken. Cyber complaint has also been filed against the entities involved in this entire Dabba trading scam.
Is your business future ready? Join the 13-week strategic ESG certification program for business sustainability and growth for CXO and business leaders by NDTV, Terry, and Zenora. Master global ESG frameworks, gain real-world tools, and lead with impact. Starts August the 23rd. Enroll now and power your business with sustainability.
यहाँ पे आप खड़े रहेंगे। मैं यहाँ पे। एक्शन। तेरी सांसों को मेरे दिल में पनाह मिल जाए। मैं पढ़ के बोलूं? आप नहीं कहा था। मुझे याद नहीं। चलो सुनने करके। अरे भैया आप मेरे आगे मत रहो।
हमारी एक्टिविटीज जो आगे और शाम के फंक्शन तक आप ठीक रहेंगे ना?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
हम चाय लेंगे?
हाँ।
थोड़ा राइट में लीजिए। प्रवीण जी we are ready when you are ready. आप ही लोगों का कार्यक्रम है, जोरदार तालियों से जरा जय जवान का और अपना स्वागत हम यहीं पे कर लेते हैं। थैंक यू सो मच। एक बार जोरदार तालियां सभी के लिए।
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Stage is set, red carpet has been rolled out for the two leaders. So this is the high-stakes summit that is taking place in Alaska, and that's the plane of US President Donald Trump. He has landed in Alaska, and before him, Russian President Vladimir Putin also landed. The two will go on to hold those meetings while Zelensky says that Russians are killing even on the day of negotiations. So we'll continue our rolling coverage. My colleague Osama joins you next, taking a quick break.
And you know, that's why it's being said that after Kahuna Pyare, this is the film that has got two superstar debutants who are becoming superstars. But what was this faith that you had on these two that you know, that shows on screen?
You know, you don't plan to make a blockbuster. You plan to make a good film. And that's what I think they never let me, you know, they didn't put that pressure on me to live up to. They never gave me a number that we have to hit or a so-called figure that I have to open to.
Well, the big breaking news coming in at this point of time, the US President Donald Trump, he has landed in Alaska. Before him, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, he arrived in Alaska as well. Meanwhile, amid all of this, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he has put out a statement ahead of this crucial meeting. Zelensky has said that, and I quote, Russians are killing on the day of negotiations. Ukraine is ready to work productively, is what Zelensky has in fact said.
Отримую доповідь від нашої розвідки, від дипломатів про підготовку зустрічі на Алясці, про те, з чим їде Путін. Ми отримуємо також доповідь з регіонів України після російських ударів. Суми, російський удар по центральному ринку, Дніпровщина, удари по містах та підприємствах, Запоріжжя, Херсонщина, Донеччина, свідомі російські удари. Війна триває саме через те, що немає не тільки наказу, але й сигналів про підготовку Москви завершувати цю війну. В день перемовин вони теж вбивають, і це багато говорить. Напередодні ми обговорили зі Сполученими Штатами Америки, з європейцями, що дійсно може спрацювати. Усім потрібне чесне закінчення війни. Україна готова працювати максимально продуктивно, щоб завершити війну. Сподіваємось на сильну позицію Америки.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all eyes are on Alaska, not for the breathtaking glaciers, but for the political ice field where the stakes could not be higher. In just a few moments from now, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, they will sit down for a summit that could change the course of the entire Ukraine war. It can redraw the geopolitical lines and test the limits of diplomacy. But even before the two leaders meet, the drama has already begun. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he touched down in Anchorage wearing a CCCP shirt. The bold red letters of the former Soviet Union splashed across his chest. It's a symbol from a bygone era, but also a not so subtle message to Washington. The question is Moscow here to talk peace or to project power? Well, as the US warns of consequences and Putin plays his own brand of high-stakes chess, the question for the world is simple. Will this summit end with a deal, a deadlock, or a dangerous escalation? And for India, watching closely from thousands of miles away, what will this handshake mean for trade, for energy, and for security? In fact, NDTV is the only Indian channel reporting live from Alaska, from the tarmac to the negotiating table, bringing you every single move, every single message, and every moment that could reshape the future of this very war. All right, my colleague Maha Siddiqui joins us to get us more on this. Maha, take us through the latest. What is happening there?
Well, the latest at the moment is that President Trump's plane has arrived here and he's just about to exit from the plane. And in a short while, we are expecting President Vladimir Putin also to arrive. There is high expectation that the red carpet that has been laid out at the tarmac will form the spot where the two leaders are going to greet each other before they step in for the official meeting. So we are learning that the first half of the meeting will be a one-on-one meeting between the two leaders, Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. And then over lunch, the delegations of both sides will join in, after which there is a joint press conference so far that we're hearing of. And the backdrop of that press conference says pursuing peace. There's a board right behind the podium which says pursuing peace. And it is expected that both leaders are going to address this press conference, although it is quite possible that ultimately only one, that is President Trump, addresses it, or no one addresses it, depending on how the meeting goes. Because President Trump, during his conversation with the reporters on board Air Force One, has also said that he might just walk out of the meeting if it doesn't go the way that he's anticipating. He'd also pointed out, Osama, earlier that within the first few minutes of the meeting, he will be able to gauge whether or not President Putin is serious about a peace negotiation. And therefore, the stakes are extremely high. As the Ukrainian president has already mentioned, the world, specifically Europe and Ukraine, understand that. This is only the first step. Remember, this meeting under pressure from Europe and Ukraine, President Trump has made it clear that this will only be the first step, after which there will be a meeting between the Ukrainian, Russian, American, and European partners to decide on the final contours of the peace deal. And he's also spoken on board about the issue of territorial swap. He has said that Ukraine will, of course, take a decision on that issue. However, this meeting today will build the foundation for further conversations, and that is why it's a highly anticipated meeting that will start in some time from now. It's 10:40 here local time, and the meeting is expected to start at 11:30 a.m. local time. So in another 50 minutes from now.
Yes, in another 15 minutes. And the keyword here, Maha, is high stakes. And that's also what the US President Donald Trump, he has posted on his social media ahead of the flight to Alaska. He is already there. In fact, on board the Air Force One, Mr. Trump, he in fact was speaking to the reporters. He told them that he's not going to Alaska to broker a deal on behalf of Ukraine. We'll try and get a sense of what this statement from the US president means. But he also said that instead his goal was getting Mr. Putin to the table. I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine is exactly what he has said. I think it's going to work out very well. And if it doesn't, I'm going to head back home real fast, is what Mr. Trump told the reporters in the presidential plane. Meanwhile, Mr. Putin believes that his continuous attacks give him strength in negotiation, but I think that hurts him, is what the US president has also added, adding that they will discuss the issue of land exchange, but it is up to Ukraine to make that decision. We'll try and get a sense of what all can be discussed in this high-stakes meeting. In fact, I'm currently joined by Sierra Claire, professor and foreign policy commentator, joining us from Los Angeles, California. I also have Tatiana Kukhareva, senior journalist. Joining me is also Elena Davlikanova, a senior researcher at the Center for Socio-Economic Policy and Innovations. And I also have Mr. Peter Dickinson, Ukraine editor for Atlantic Council, joining from Kiev in Ukraine. A very warm welcome to all of you. This is quite a significant, meeting that is taking place there. And I also want to understand how India is looking at these developments, because the future of the Russia-Ukraine war, it might decide how things unfold in the tariff talks. But we'll talk about that a little bit later, apart from Donald Trump getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Let me go across first to Sierra Claire. Sierra, there have been a lot of conversations around the Nobel Peace Prize. A lot of it is basically said in a jest, but when you look at the political posturing and the optics around it, it is quite interesting, because just a short while ago, Hillary Clinton, she posted on her social media, and I'm paraphrasing this for everyone, if Trump stops the war, he is worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. Decode that for us.
Great to be with you. Yes, well, Trump has already stopped 6 other conflicts. So many people, have said that he already has certainly done his part to earn the Nobel Peace Prize. But this one should clinch it for him, because this war has been such a tough one to crack, so much gridlock. And Hillary Clinton, coming out and saying that is certainly interesting. They're former political rivals, but I think it shows how much everybody wants to end this war. She had added some caveats in that statement, so there are certainly different approaches that people have taken to how they want this deal to go, but nobody's actually doing it. And I think that's the key, is that Trump is the one who's doing it. He's taking action, and so we just have to give him our optimism and hope that it works out.
Okay, let me go across to Tatiana Kukhareva, and I want to point out Donald Trump's statement here, where he says that he's not here to negotiate for Ukraine. Tatiana, how does this square with his claim of wanting to end the war? Break it down for us.
Well, look, Osama, and let me just take a second to congratulate you. I believe it's already the next day in India, but still happy Independence Day to you. Belated.
Thank you.
Look, Donald Trump says a lot of things. Let's be clear on that. He says a lot of things within one day sometimes, and those things don't necessarily fall in the same line within one day. He is definitely there to negotiate for the US, but let's not forget that this, from the very beginning, and the very beginning, I would say, was in 2014, which I have to always remind people, it was a proxy war. It was never a conflict between Moscow and Kiev. There were always other parties involved. And there was always the American role in that conflict as well. So the fact that Donald Trump is not negotiating for Kiev, yes, of course he's not. He's the American president. How much say Kiev has in this conflict from the very beginning, and surely right now when we are about to witness this historic negotiation, that is the bigger question.
Yeah, but I also want to talk about that gesture from Minister Lavrov. Let me go across to Peter Dickinson for this. Was Mr. Lavrov's choice of that shirt, that CCCP shirt, do you think it was intended as a political signal? And if so, what message is Moscow sending to Washington and the rest of the world?
Good evening. Yes, it was a very clear, intentional message, of course. And the message was one of imperialism. This has been a war of imperialism since day one, since 2014. And at this point, I think the Russians are saying quite openly, we're not going to apologize for our imperialism anymore. We believe it's our right to claim what is ours. We hear from Putin often that he refers to the territory he takes over in Ukraine as historically Russian land. Now, of course, by displaying the Soviet banners, they're saying, we don't apologize for that. We're going to take the land because we believe it's ours. So it was a very, very calculated move from Lavrov. And I think it's got the response I would imagine that he expected and that he wanted.
Okay. Elena, Ukraine has not been invited to this particular summit. How concerned are you that decisions could be made about Ukraine without its participation there?
There have been so many attempts to take decisions on behalf of Ukraine. However, I believe that since 2014, when Russia launched its genocidal war against Ukraine, the Ukrainian people proved that no decisions will be made for them, because we paid a very high price with a lot of lives to fight for our not only sovereignty, but also for our right to determine our own future. So I believe that there will be no decisions made. There might be some proposals that Kyiv will look into, that Kyiv will consult with European partners on. So I believe that at the end of the day, there should be peace, but it should be fair.
Okay, but do you see any possibility that this meeting could lead to a ceasefire that Kiev possibly finds acceptable?
Well, since again 2014, Ukraine and Russia had more than 200 rounds of negotiations, and Russia always violated all the agreements, and we do not believe Russians at all. However, maybe at some point, sanity will, Russians will come to terms with sanity and will stop this war, because this war can stop any moment. It just depends on the decisions in Kremlin.
Tatiana, you want to respond to that?
I don't think that I need to respond to this, because Ms. Devlenkanova has been saying the same thing for, 3.5 years now? And I believe it's kind of a little bit outdated altogether. Look, Osama, let me just clarify that I appreciate that some might not find the sense of humor of our foreign minister that amusing. We actually do. In terms of the political messages, let's leave it to the negotiators at the actual summit. I don't believe that. I think that the one thing that we would want to keep in this crazy, crazy times is our sense of humor. And not everything should be politicized to the extent of outright propaganda. In the meantime, I would suggest my Ukrainian counterparts step away from the rule book and from the texts that have been so carefully curated for them 3 years ago, and start at least reading history books, preferably not in Ukrainian language. That might clear a few things up for them as to why this conflict began, as to what and who is actually responsible, who's been stoking it from the very beginning.
Okay, Sierra Claire, before this turns into a heated discussion, I want to get this from you. How does Ukraine, or how should Ukraine interpret Mr. Lavrov's shirt? As a harmless provocation, or as a warning of expansionist intentions, or is it just, in a way, a sense of humor?
Well, I think that we have to remember that Trump is the one who brought Russia here to the US. And so naturally, they're responding and they're wanting to kind of take back some of their own messaging because they are on the US turf, and those optics alone are causing some backlash in Russia. So I would say that it's more about what they want to show, that they're still in control of this meeting because they're the ones that came here, than it is really a message to Ukraine.
I'm pretty sure Tatiana doesn't agree with that. But Sierra Claire, when it comes to Donald Trump and the kind of statements that he makes, another statement that he made was, if it doesn't work out, I'll head back home real fast. Is this just bravado? Is this a sign that he's keeping expectations deliberately low? What is it? Before you answer that, there is a breaking piece of information coming in at this point of time. And while these talks are going to take place, while the talks are going to happen in just a short while from now, the Ukraine-Russia war, it continues. These are the pictures that we are getting from the Ukraine forces have shelled Donetsk. In fact, Trump, Putin, they are set to meet, but the shelling is continuing. And from all the multiple reports that we are getting at this point of time, Russia has claimed that one person has died in these attack at this point of time. So the war, it continues. And Russia says that one person has died. All right, Claire, let me ask you a question about this, what we have just witnessed at this point of time. The war continues, the talks are set to happen. How do you see this development? How do you see this sustained shelling that is taking place? This is what we are getting from Russia at this point of time, but we have been getting reports from Ukraine as well. How do you see this?
Well, I would say that, Putin has been single-mindedly pursuing this conflict, only focusing on Ukraine. And this is just another sign of that. And the Russian economy has suffered. Russia's influence in other parts of the world has suffered. And that's why this face-to-face meeting with Trump is so important, because it allows Trump to really, use his negotiating skill and get Putin's focus onto some of the deals that the Trump administration has offered, some of the economic incentives, and just draw his focus towards what could be for Russia, rather than this endless conflict, that Russia does not see a way out of currently.
Okay. Peter Dickinson, do respond to what has been said by Sierra Claire. And especially in the light of what we are seeing at the moment, Russia says that one person has died in this shelling.
Well, we're seeing a lot of attacks on the civilian population in Ukraine. The month of July was the highest civilian death toll in Ukraine since the very first weeks of the war, in fact, according to UN statistics that were released just yesterday. So we're seeing a concerted effort by the Russians to target Ukrainian civilians and to try and break Ukraine's morale by bombing Ukraine's towns and cities and targeting residential areas. So this is a very major concern, and I understand from the comments we've heard from President Trump that it's also something that concerns him very much as well. He's often referenced the fact that Putin has conversations with him. They seem like very productive conversations. They seem to have found a common language. And then afterwards, when he hangs up the phone, he finds out that Russia has bombed yet another Ukrainian city and massacred large numbers of civilians. So this is a real obstacle to making any progress. Beyond the fighting on the battlefield itself, the large-scale attacks on Ukrainian civilians, I think, will be a real issue. And I would imagine they'll be discussing that in some detail today in Alaska, because it's a real obstacle to making progress toward peace.
All right. While we are talking about this, there is another piece of breaking news that is coming in at this point of time. And Ukraine says that Russia appears to be preparing for a nuclear-powered cruise missile test ahead of these talks between the Russian president and the US president. And multiple researchers from multiple reports we have said that they have analyzed satellite images, and there's a significant activity at some of the test sites in that region, including increased personnel, equipment, ships and aircraft associated with earlier tests. So this is a big claim by Ukraine. Ukraine saying that Russia is readying for a nuclear test, and nuclear-powered cruise missile test is being conducted, and all of this is happening amid these talks. The talks are going to take place in just a short while from now, but this is what we are learning at this point of time. Tatiana, decode this for us. Ukraine says, and this is a big claim by Ukraine, saying that Russia is readying for a nuclear test. How do you see this?
No, I see this, Osama, as an attempt to disrupt the negotiations that are about to kick off. Also, let's just clarify for Peter. Peter, when you were telling about Russians killing Ukrainians, you were commenting on pictures of Ukrainians bombing the Donetsk, which is under Russian control right now. So please at least keep your facts in check. This is Ukraine bombing the Russian side, not the other way around, and people dying in Russian cities that have already been Russian for 3 years. So let's at least understand what we're talking about here. And these are the pictures that you're looking at right now. In terms of what Kiev claims at this, I mean, this makes all the sense in the world, such claims, without any sort of proof, any sort of tangible evidence, you know. We're quoting nameless researchers. In the meantime, the timing is very, very peculiar, Osama. You would think that with the amount of meltdowns that Vladimir Zelensky has had prior to this meeting that we're expecting in the coming, well, you know, within the coming hour, you would think that this would be the last-ditch attempt to throw in something that could potentially derail the meeting. Well, it's not going to, but at least it's an effort, you know, and the effort that counts.
Okay, this is a question for both Elena and Peter. Do you think this is a last-ditch effort by Ukraine to destabilize these talks, as Tatiana mentions? Starting with Elena.
Well, Tatiana, being an embodiment of the worst of Russian propaganda, doesn't recognize that Russia has been blackmailing the whole world with the possibility to make a nuclear strike starting from 2022. Why does Russia do it? Because, again, since 2022, Russia is stuck in Ukraine. It doesn't have any significant achievements in terms of new land captures, and that's why it needs to project its power, and this is only nuclear bomb that is one of the arguments during the negotiation, because Russia doesn't really have cards in its hands. And we all also understand that Russian economy is suffering. And in my opinion, the best outcome of this negotiation could be stricter sanctions on Russia. And when Russian economy finally feels the result of all the costs of genocidal war, then maybe Tatiana will not be that humorous, because Ukrainian people have been dying for more than 10 years, and me being in Kiev also for 3 years, I know what shelling actually looks like, and this is definitely not funny.
All right, we'll quickly go to Peter in just a short while from now. But these are the breaking. This is the breaking news that we are getting, and these are the first visuals from inside the Air Force One that we are getting you at this point of time. The Alaska Summit, those talks, those are going to take place in just a short while from now. But this is Marco Rubio and Mr. Witkoff. They are seen in this particular picture. They hold discussions en route to Alaska. whether there's going to be a deal or no deal for the US President Donald Trump or for that matter, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, that is something that we'll have to wait and watch. We can only assess that after that meeting ends. But these are the first pictures that you can see on your screens. Marco Rubio and Mr. Witkoff in a discussion, sort of a discussion en route to Alaska. All right, let me go back to Peter first. Peter, do respond to what Tatiana had said. And also, you know, the fact that this when you get this sort of a threat from Russia, when Ukraine says that, look, there is a possibility that Russia is preparing for a nuclear test. How does Ukraine and how should Ukraine perceive this potential test of this missile? What are the implications that you're looking at?
Well, unfortunately, this is nothing new. Russia has been using nuclear blackmail throughout this war. The very first day of the invasion, Putin warned of a nuclear response if the West dared to help support Ukraine. He's repeatedly used nuclear blackmail at various points throughout the conflict, often quite veiled, sometimes quite directly. And his colleagues in the Kremlin have done likewise. So it's been quite an effective tool that the Russians have used repeatedly. I imagine that tonight's reported preparations for a test are part of that as well, to send a message to the Americans that they are capable of such things. I would say it's a bluff. I think that the Ukrainians have shown that this is a bluff. Again and again throughout the war, Russia has threatened, Putin himself has threatened to use nuclear weapons. Ukraine has called his bluff, and the Russians have done nothing. The most obvious example was in 2022, when Putin claimed the annexed territories that are now under discussion today in Alaska, in fact, and said, they are now part of Russia forever. I will use nuclear weapons. I'm not bluffing. Ukraine liberated the city of Kherson just days after he said that, and he retreated without doing anything. So Ukraine has experience of challenging Putin here and calling his bluff successfully. Certainly, I think in Kiev, they hope that the Americans and other Western countries will also take stock from that and learn that the only way to deal with a nuclear bully or a nuclear saber rattling is to confront it, because the alternative is disastrous for world peace. Imagine if the countries of the West back down to nuclear blackmail. What message is that going to send out to the rest of the world? It's going to mean that countries with nuclear weapons will use nuclear blackmail, and countries without nuclear weapons will feel, well, we have to have nuclear weapons too, or we're not safe anymore. So it's a disastrous precedent for international peace that Russia is using these nuclear threats. But as I say, Ukraine has already shown the way, I think, here by challenging the Russians and calling Putin's bluff so far successfully. Ukraine will continue to do that, I'm sure. The hope is that other countries will follow suit.
Okay. Before we continue this discussion, let's also get you this report from Igor Piskunov, who sent us this report just a short while ago.
Now we are actually at the airstrip where the leaders of Russia and the United States are set to start their historic meeting in the next few minutes. That right there is Donald Trump's jet. It landed just a few minutes ago. I'm being told that Vladimir Putin's plane will be parked there right after it lands, and then Putin will be greeted by Trump, and then they'll walk together down that red carpet over there. Again, all of this is happening at a U.S. military base in Alaska. The Russian president's plane has already entered American airspace and is expected to land here in the next couple of minutes, making him the first Russian leader to set foot on Alaskan soil. We'll be keeping you updated. Stay tuned.
All right, Sierra Claire, we are hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough as far as this summit, this talk is concerned. But, what according to you are the areas of deepest disagreements here? What specific points of contention do you feel between the United States and Russia that is likely to prove most challenging to reconcile or resolve?
Well, I think the issue of the territories is something that the US and Russia can get closer on, and so that leaves from the Russian demands, that leaves arming Ukraine and the expansion of NATO. I think the US supports the expansion of NATO in principle. However, I do think that it's unrealistic that Ukraine would join NATO anytime soon. So there might even be room for negotiation on that as well. But generally, I think that's definitely going to be a point of contention. And then the arming of Ukraine. And, that's really a demand that doesn't make sense from Russia. So I think the U.S. supports, the arming of Ukraine because all of us want to see a lasting peace. And so I think that's going to be a real point of contention because Russia's going to try to focus on, well, we're going to get maybe some peace right now, but then, they want to leave this option on the table where they could come back and do this again. And the U.S. position is totally against that.
Sierra, we are hoping for that lasting peace. But what if these talks break down? What are the consequences that we are looking at? And let's talk about the short-term consequences here. If the negotiations collapse, what immediate actions or retaliations might be expected from either side?
I think if Trump, has to walk away from this meeting because he feels that Vladimir Putin is not being genuine here, we're going to see a different side of Trump. And he's already kind of foreshadowed that by saying that the consequences could be extreme. There's a sanctions package right now that's in the Senate that's ready to go. There's also asset seizures, which the U.S. currently has not pursued. Europe has pursued some asset seizures for Russian state assets overseas, but the U.S. hasn't done that yet. So you could see the U.S. Turning their focus to that. And then you could also see targeting additional sanctions, things like Russian fertilizer exports, things that are not military or energy in nature, which is what the sanctions have currently targeted. And I think that could be a real blow to the Russian economy as well if the US and Europe were to turn their focus onto those things.
Yeah. Tatiana, the same question for you. If at all the talks collapse, what immediate actions or retaliation we might see from Russia?
Well, I don't think, Osama, this is the time and the place to analyze what happens if it falls through, because you see the two leaders, if I'm not mistaken, you're seeing the Russian president's plane just pulling up. So we'll see them together walking that red carpet, Donald Trump meeting Vladimir Putin at the at the plane and walking with him together. It is very much an image of success in itself, if you get what I mean. The two of them meeting and coming to a table to negotiate. I'm sorry to say that the Professor Sierra Claire is just not making any sense when she says, look, there are going to be terrible consequences and we're going to crush Russia with sanctions. Well, America's been crushing Russia with sanctions for 3 years now, and yet the economy that I believe it was from day one that everybody was saying, oh, your economy is going to collapse, It hasn't, and it's actually been growing despite all of the sanctions. You're forgetting that Russia is a big, powerful country. Luckily, Donald Trump remembers that. And in terms of arming Ukraine, look, you need to listen to your own president. He's been freezing those armaments. He's been talking that he's not willing to flush down billions of dollars for a country, just like Joe Biden used to do throughout the whole beginning of this conflict. He is thinking about American money, not about Ukraine and its safety, but about American money, American businesses. and American relationships with Russia, which is what that summit is ultimately about. Yes, there is the issue of solving this crisis. There's also an issue of bilateral relationships between Moscow and Washington, which is not the least on the global scale, not the least importance. It is just not the time. We need to see what the two are going to be discussing today and what they actually let the public in on after this meeting.
All right. So these are the first visuals that you can see of the Russian President Vladimir Putin inside his plane, and we'll keep getting you all these images and pictures as they come in. Vladimir Putin's plane, it has reached Alaska, and so has Donald Trump's plane. They both will be meeting, they both will be talking, and they both will be hoping to get to the table where they can come to any sort of consensus. All right, these are the first visuals that you're getting of the US President Donald Trump arriving in Alaska, and these are the first visuals that NDTV has got to you. This is the first, the US President getting out of his plane. Will there be a deal? Will there be no deal? Well, that is something that we'll have to wait and watch. But can the Trump-Putin talks break any ice, especially in Alaska? Well, that is something that is going to be watched very, very closely. And so as the Russian President Vladimir Putin getting out of his aircraft, in fact, this is a crucial meeting that is going to take place in just a short while from now. Meanwhile, we are also speaking about the fact that there are shellings that are taking place at this point of time. But Donald Trump, he had earlier called this meeting high stakes. He had posted on his social media where before arriving here, before leaving for Alaska. In fact, while speaking to the journalist on board the Air Force One, Mr. Donald Trump, he told the reporters that he's not going to Alaska to broker a deal on behalf of Ukraine. He made it very clear. But he also said that instead his goal was getting Mr. Putin to the table. In fact, amid all of this, while Mr. Trump was flying to Alaska, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he said that the US President should convince Russia to stop its invasion. It is time to end the war, and the necessary steps must be taken by Russia. We are counting on America, is what Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, he had said in that social media post. Meanwhile, India is also looking at these developments very, very closely because the future of this conflict and the duration of this conflict, it also might affect how things unfold in the talks between India and the United States, especially about the tariffs. So the first visuals of the two leaders greeting each other, Donald Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin greeting each other. All right, let me go across to Maha Siddiqui, who has been covering this from Alaska. Maha, both the leaders have arrived. Take us through what is happening.
Yes, absolutely. We can see those pictures coming in of the handshake on the tarmac between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. They are now walking towards the venue. This is on the joint base, the joint military base in the United States. And right behind me, right outside the joint base, if you can see behind me, there are peaceful demonstrators standing here with Ukrainian flags saying, stand with Ukraine. Have a look at this behind me. Right outside the base is where this meeting is taking place. And meanwhile, peaceful demonstrators here making it a point that Ukraine is not confident as the two big leaders discuss the fate of Ukraine clearly over here, because we are seeing pictures now of President Putin and President Trump coming in, the second handshake there of the two leaders. I would say some sort of relaxed body language there, Sama. Both are trying to at least depict that they are showing willingness to talk on the peace deal. Remember, President Trump specifically had said that within minutes he will gauge the interest of President Trump in striking a peace deal or not. He's also said that more sanctions could be levied on Russia if they do not show any inclination today of striking a peace deal, and that it could be punishing for Russia. And finally, he's also said that if things don't go his way, he might also just walk out of the meeting. So I've given you all those aspects from inside, from outside the joint military base. Within the next 20 minutes, the meeting will start. The two leaders have now got into a car and they will be moved to the place where, first of all, as per the schedule, there will be a one-on-one meeting between the two leaders, US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, followed by a lunch where the delegations of both the sides will join in, followed by a joint press conference at 3:30 p.m. local time, which is 5 a.m. India time. The joint press conference has a placard behind the podium saying "Pursuing Peace." So we are expecting that it will indeed be a joint press conference of the two leaders. There you have pictures of the two leaders sitting in the car there, Osama, on the left-hand side of your television screens. You can see them being taken away in just a bit to a spot where the two leaders will have a one-on-one. That is, they will be talking to each other directly about pursuing peace and ending the war in Ukraine. President Trump has just received President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, in Anchorage, at the joint military base. This is a strategically important military base, a base that is a projection of American power in the region, overseeing both the Arctic region as well as the Pacific, and a region where the economic and security interests of both the countries also intersect. The two leaders now headed towards the place where they will be holding their one-on-one meeting. But the expectation from this meeting is very high. It's a high-stakes meeting, as we have already pointed out, highly anticipated. The Ukrainian president himself this morning has called this meeting a very high-stakes meeting, considering that the fate of Ukraine might be decided. At least the first step will be taken in that direction, though Ukraine has pointed out that there can be no decision on ending the war in Ukraine without the involvement of the country that has been at the receiving end of the aggression from the Russian side. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, these are pictures from just a few minutes ago, and you can see both of them shaking hands there. This was the second handshake really for the press there. Before that, just after stepping out of the flight, one handshake there between the two leaders, after which they took that car and have been driven away to a meeting spot. The two leaders are expected to, at least if we go by what the Russian side has indicated, that the meeting might go on for a couple of hours. This will be a one-on-one meeting first, followed by a delegation level meeting as well, and then a joint press conference. Osama?
Speaking about that meeting, Maha, who all are going to be present in that delegation level meeting? We saw Marco Rubio and Mr. Witkoff in that picture earlier. We also saw Mr. Peskov on the other hand. Who all, just give us a sense of who all are going to be part of that delegation level meeting.
So it's interesting that you mentioned Steve Witkoff there. He'd also gone to Moscow, I understand, just at the beginning of this month, before that meeting was announced to take place in Alaska. So the top leaders of both sides might be present in that delegation level meeting. Of course, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, from the American side will be an important person to be part of the delegation. And Steve Witkoff, because of reasons we have just discussed, on the side of the other side, rather, another top level or leaders going to be present there. Those who advise President Putin will all be part of